So I'll tell you something funny. Here we are at the beginning of 2025, and I thought, well, if people ask me if I have a New Year's resolution, what should I say? I need to have something prepared. I'm the kind of person, like if I recognize I need to make a change in my life, I stop what I'm doing immediately and I make the change. I research, I figure it out, and I do the thing. But still, just to be normal in conversation, people are talking about this, in my life. What's your New Year's resolution? What's your goal? And so I decided, here's a good one. How about something we hear about men is that we need to be more in touch with our emotions. We need to be more vulnerable. So I thought, okay, well, let me figure out what that looks like. So I thought, well, what are my emotions that I'm aware of? What guides me? Anger and joy. Like absolutely, I'm kind of always angry, like the Incredible Hulk, and I'm always happy. Like, I know that sounds like a weird mix, but that's the energy source that gets me through. It motivates me for my job at work, being a husband, being a father, being active in that community, whatever it is. That's my energy source, and I know that. So I actually looked up what are the emotions. I didn't really know what the emotions were, because those are the only two I really recognized. So then I came across this chart that showed one called Genius. It was its own category, and on there it had passion. Like, yeah, passion, creativity. Like, oh yeah, every passion. I'm a passionate person, so okay, I feel anger, I feel joy, I feel passion, and I feel creativity. Those define me. I feel those all the time, all day long. But then on the other half of the emotional wheel that I looked up, there was sadness, fear, and disgust. And they had their own categories, but they include loneliness and being embarrassed and vulnerable, And when I looked at those, I actually felt rage inside of me. It was a defense mechanism. It was like as if I was feeling attacked just by looking at those words. And why is that? Because ultimately, my identity is based on disassociating myself from the idea of weakness. I have to always be strong. I have to always be capable, in control. That's my identity. And the thing is, that does guide me through my life. I even asked my wife, I said, well, would you want me to be those emotions in sadness and fear and disgust? Would you want me to be sad and insecure and embarrassed? And she's like, well, no. I can still empathize with people. I once had those emotions when I was a boy. I don't as a man, but suppose I outgrew them in order to be what I need to be as a functioning man. But as I've talked to my wife, I've talked to other females about this, here's my takeaway, and I want to hear from you on this. It appears that women have access to all of those emotions, all of them. And they encounter them, if not on a daily basis, but on a weekly basis. Kind of like this, feeling this emotional roller coaster that makes them feel alive, that makes them, in theory, happy. They need to feel it all. I think what I'm finding is most men don't need to feel them all, and they don't really want to feel them all. I think a lot of men are like me. Anger, joy, creativity, passion, that's enough to get you by. But what's funny is that men do seek out access to these when they feel like it. That's kind of what attracts men to women, because women are exotic and having all the emotions. And a lot of guys are into sports. That'll make a man sad and disgusted and embarrassed, etc. Right? For me, I'm a songwriter, and that's what I do for fun. But I often find that my lyrics actually express emotion. Even the first song I just recorded on my channel this year, The Mandela Effect, opening line, feels like, and I'm talking about emotions, but ultimately, the first phrase is feels like, and it's talking about me feeling disconnected and kind of sad. Well, I didn't know that I had that in me. I'd almost say that for me as a man, it's 30% anger, 30% joy, 30%, passion ultimately, or creativity, whatever. And then the leftovers, these invisible things that I have to kind of seek out. But I think that ultimately that's what attracts men and women. Women are attracted to the calm stability and assertiveness of men. Men are attracted to this creature who has these other emotions that he's kind of entertained or intrigued by, but he doesn't necessarily feel himself. So I would love to know your thoughts on that. That's my theory, that's my finding. As I'm learning to be, quote, more vulnerable and in touch with my emotions, what I'm learning is I'm really only accessing half of the emotions available, and that's how I want it. And I purposely disassociate myself from the ones that I think females more so have access to, or children specifically as well. But men, typically, as they mature and become dependable, stable men who women find attractive and people depend on, men are not having the full range of emotions. They're distancing themselves from even the idea of disgust and sadness and all those embarrassment and all of that. So again, specifically, men disassociate from sadness, fear, and disgust, but specifically tend to use as their fuel joy. Genius is actually the category that includes creativity, passion, and joy. What are your thoughts on that? There are absolutely always exceptions. I know men who identify as being very emotional. They tend to be Enneagram 4 if you're familiar with Enneagram. And there's going to be females who would say they resonate more with what I've said, that they resonate more with joy and anger or creativity. So there's going to be exceptions, but in general, this is what I'm finding. If you're a man who's trying to be more in touch with your emotions, maybe just the understanding that you don't really need half of your emotions in most occurrences, maybe that's who you are, and at least you understand your emotions better. And by realizing that, you can be more vulnerable, but you can also identify when other people are going through certain emotions that you don't go through on a regular basis, but you can at least empathize with them. Hey, I recognize that you feel alone or sad or judged or vulnerable, whatever it is, and then therefore you are that calm, assertive voice of reason, because ultimately that's what we see here. We see a balance, don't we? The more logical a person or a situation is, the less emotion there tends to be. And the more emotion there tends to be, the less logic there tends to be. And there's that balance. I think for the most part, men tend to be more logical and less emotional, or have less access to all the emotions. Women tend to have access to all the emotions, but logic is not necessarily the first thing that they go with. And that's part of that attraction, that's part of that balance that we see between men and women. With that being said, emotion absolutely still plays a role in a man's life, and it needs to. And logic absolutely plays a role in a woman's life. And that's important to recognize that. But what we do see with the gender differences is, as a boy turns into a man, we see him abandon these certain emotions. And we see that women do not. And that's not passing judgment. That's not saying that's a bad thing or that one's weaker and one's stronger. It's just saying that there absolutely is a balance. Even in the Bible, God created Adam and all the animals, and basically Adam tells God, I think I'm missing something. And then he creates the woman, and then he has access to this full range of emotions and a new experience in life. So I'm very excited about my research and finding, all in the name of trying to understand myself better as it relates to emotions and being more vulnerable. I would love to hear from you. Your comments belong.